Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mitipad Paramahansa, Rudrakacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Rudrakacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Isopanisad Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 9th day of December 2019 in SanDiego, we're reading from Sri Isopanisad, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are beginning mantra number 9. Andang tamak pravashanti ye vidyam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya uvidyayam nataha. Andang tamak pravashanti ye vidyam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya uvidyayam nataha. Andang tamak pravashanti ye vidyam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya uvidyayam nataha. Andhang tamak pravashanti ye avidyam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo ya uvidyayam nataha. Andam tamak pravashanti Ye vidyam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo. Yo vidyayam taha andhan tamak pravashanti. Ye vidyam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo. Yo vidyayam taha andang tamak prabhashanti. Ye vidyam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo. Yahu vidyayam taha andham. No, andham. No, there's an N in there. You have an N? Andam? Andam. Okay, go ahead. Keep going. Andam tamak pravashanti. Ye vidyam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo. Yau vidyayam taha andham, gross in the ignorance. Tamaha, darkness. Pravishanti, enter into. Ye, those who. Avidyam, nescience. Upasate, worship. Tataha, than that. Bhuyaha, still more. Eva, like. Te, they. Tamaha, darkness. Ye, those who. U, also. Vidyayam, in the culture of knowledge. Vataha, engaged. Translation. Those who engage in the culture of nescient activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. Purport. This mantra offers a comparative study of vidya and avidya. Avidya, or ignorance, is undoubtedly dangerous, but vidya, or knowledge, is even more dangerous when mistaken or misguided. Time out. Glenn. The curtains, sorry. This mantra of Sri Isopanisad is more applicable today than at any time in the past. Modern civilization has advanced considerably in the field of mass education, but the result is that people are more unhappy than ever before because of the stress placed on material advancement to the exclusion of the most important part of life, the spiritual aspect. As far as vidya is concerned, the first mantra has explained very clearly that the Supreme Lord is the proprietor of everything, and that forgetfulness of this fact is ignorance. The more a man forgets this fact of life, the more he is in darkness. In view of this, a godless civilization directed toward the so-called advancement of education, so-called advancement, is more dangerous than a civilization in which the masses of people are less, quote, educated. Of the different classes of men, karmis, jnanis, and yogis, the karmis are those who are engaged in the activities of sense gratification. In the modern civilization, 99.9% of the people are engaged in the activities of sense gratification, under the flags of industrialism, economic development, altruism, political activism, and so on. All these activities are more or less based on satisfaction of the senses, to the exclusion of the kind of God consciousness described in the first mantra. In the language of the Bhagavad Gita, 7.15, people who are engaged in gross sense gratification are mudhas, asses. The ass is a symbol of stupidity. Those who simply engage in the profitless pursuit of sense gratification are worshipping avidya, according to Sri Isopanisad. And those who play the role of helping this sort of civilization in the name of educational advancement are actually doing more harm than those who are on the platform of gross sense gratification. The advancement of learning by a godless people is as dangerous as a valuable jewel on the hood of a cobra. A cobra decorated with a valuable jewel is more dangerous than one not decorated. In the Hari Bhakti Sudodaya 3.11.12, the advancement of education by a godless people is compared to decorations on a dead body. In India, as in many other countries, some people follow the custom of leading a procession with a decorated dead body for the pleasure of the lamenting relatives. In the same way, modern civilization is a patchwork of activities meant to cover the perpetual miseries of material existence. All such activities are aimed toward sense gratification. But above the senses is the mind, and above the mind is the intelligence, and above the intelligence is the soul. Thus the aim of real education should be self-realization, realization of the spiritual values of the soul. Any education which does not lead to such realization must be considered avidya, or nescience. And to culture such nescience means to go down to the darkest region of ignorance. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmiditam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, as is often the practice in our Shastra, the teachings that are being imparted employ this contrast and going back and forth. In previous verse, it was talking about a person who always sees everything in relation to the Lord, and there was a nice description here about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is embodied, omniscient, beyond reproach, without veins, pure and uncontaminated, self-sufficient philosopher, who has been fulfilling everyone's desires since time immemorial. But now, we're back to the contrast, which is the blind. This word andam means blind. Om jnana timirandasya. The same word is used. Timira, darkness and blindness, or avidya, ignorance, blindness, darkness. This is what's being spoken of here. So now he's going back, and he says, on the other hand, although he doesn't use that word, on the other hand, those who are in gross ignorance, who are in darkness, they enter into the worlds of the faithless, into the darkest region of ignorance. They worship avidya, or ignorance. Now when I was reading this, it brought to mind this verse in the 87th chapter of the 10th canto, which is the prayers of the personified Vedas. This is quite a chapter. You know, before we had the 10th canto, of course we had the Krishna book from like 1970 or so. That was a central part of being a Hare Krishna, was reading the Krishna book. Especially at night, we often read the Krishna book before taking rest. Hopefully you dream of Krishna. And so when you're reading along, you know, the chapters are pretty short. Think of the beginning, a few chapters here, the killing of Putana, and then they go on and on and on. And when you get to chapter 87, it's like half the book. It's huge. Like 50 pages, 60 pages of these prayers. And the reason is that this chapter, right in the middle of the Leela of Krishna, in the 10th canto, it's all philosophy. It's the deepest philosophy. And these verses are unique in terms of the meter and their length. They're practically the longest verses in the Bhagavatam. Anyway, they have a wonderful meter, and I started memorizing them. And I only have one memorized now. I mean, the others are in there. If I went back, it would come out. But this one especially struck me. And all the nice purports are written by His Grace, Gopi Puranadhara Prabhu. He wrote he's completely responsible for the last 10 chapters, 11 chapters of the 10th canto. So the verse goes like this. Where does it go? Tadidam akulayam atmasarit priyavat shadati taton nuketu yete priyatmanacha. Nasadadupas, it says, Nabadadamantaho asadupasana yatmanaho yadunashiye brahmantu dubaye kushadir batak. Tadidam kulayam. Says this human form of body is very suited to serve you. This is the personified Vedas, the Upanishad is personified, praying to Mahavishnu before the creation, kind of waking him up. As soon as he wakes up and glances, this is what happens. All of the living entities come into the universes that has been emanating from his body as he's breathing. This is you see the picture in the corner there. So they're chanting all these wonderful shlokas. And this one says that the human form of body is perfectly suited to serving you. And when someone takes up the devotional service, then the body becomes a very dear friend and paraphernalia for service. And you from the inside as a super soul, you're guiding and everything is very harmonious. On the other hand, this in one verse he has the contrast. Those, alas, who don't take their pleasure in serving you, and that's the key, to get to the point where serving Krishna is such a pleasure you never want to stop, 24 hours a day. Those who don't do that, asadupasanaya, they worship the impermanent. This idea of worshiping gross matter, it's all around us, so people don't think that that's what they're doing. But that's really one of the characteristics of worship. Think about it, is paying attention. That's the first thing. And looking to various elements of the material energy, which may be in the bodies of your loved ones, whatever it may be, as sources of pleasure and safety and comfort and all of these different things. And really, wanting to serve and glorify in hopes of getting some reciprocation. And think about it, to become completely absorbed in the making money in this world. Of course, many people are just struggling at the bottom, trying to survive. The mass of the workers, even in a place like the United States, are suffering in many ways. But those who are, the movers and the shakers, the 1/10 of 1%, or maybe, your whole focus. I mean, if you get involved in the stock market and all of these hedge funds and everything, that's got to be in your mind all the time, because you never know what's. Nowadays you have to know what's happening in the China market, what's happening in this market. It's a world thing. Something's always going on, right? So you have to worry about that. Your money is spread all over. That's your worship. That's your meditation, and you're meditating on material energy. You're worshiping money, mammon. So that's what's described here, or in this verse, and from the 87th chapter. And what did he say? Asadupasana yapmahano, which is a virtual suicide for the soul. Of course, you can't kill the soul, but you can postpone, put off the day, the realization for millions and millions of years. And that's what this is, a virtual death for the spiritual life of the soul. And then what happens, instead of having this nice human body, you have to wander through all lower bodies, which are sources of great fear, and there's no chance of self-realization. A very wonderful verse in purport. So this is the same idea here. Those who avidya upasate, they're worshipping ignorance, they're worshipping illusion. They enter into the darkness, the darkest region of ignorance. And then he says, but even worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. Now this word rataha is kind of a Sanskrit idiom, which means so-called. We find that in the Bhagavad Gita. Yamimam pushpitam bhacham prabhadanti vipashtata. Krishna, in the 2nd chapter, he's saying, "O Arjuna, there are those who are supposed followers of the Vedas, but they think that the flowery words of the Karma Kanda section." Now the Vedas have different sections. Karma Kanda are full of sacrifices and penances and all tapasyas and things, even mantras, instructions to worship, that are meant to take you to a better place, either a better birth on this plane or to the heavenly planets. Pushpidam Vacham, very flowery word describing what's going on in Nandana. You get some of that even in Bhagavatam. You'll find a description of the subterranean heavenly planets. Whoever thought there was such a thing? Planets below Earth, but which are heavenly. Just like Bali Maharaj, went down to, I think, Rasatala, was it? And it was very heavenly there, and he had Vamana as his doorkeeper, But this is so the Pushpidam Vacham, these flowery words of the Vedas, which inspire one to sacrifice and go, so forth. Those who were so-called knowledge studies of the Vedas, Vidyayam, this word rata is used, Veda Vada Rata. Veda Rata Rata. The same word as Rata is used. The so-called speakers and knowers of this part of the Vedas, they're not really learned. They're sticking with one part of the Vedas,
But that's just the preliminary part. To at least, if you want to advance materially, at least stay within the Vedic paradigm. Don't go off into animal life, like Rishabhadev says, and perform vikarma. Vikarma means vicious activities. It's easy to remember because it starts with the same word, the same letters, vi. Means not with any reference to the Vedas, just what we see today. Mass slaughtering of cows and exploiting of people. And when you go abroad and you bomb countries until they come under the control so you can extract the oil. It's just horrible, horrible, horrible. That's way outside. That's going to take you down for sure. A lot of suffering. But this is activity that's materialistic, but you're following the rules and regulations of the Vedas. So that's better. But here Krishna says in this, but they're so-called knowers of the Vedas. They don't understand the purpose of the Vedas, which we learned from chapter 15, text 15. This one line is easy to remember. Vedaischa sarvar ahameva vedya. By all the Vedas I am to be known, Krishna says. If your study of the Vedas doesn't lead to me, then it's Vedavadarata. It's so-called study of the Vedas. So here we have the same word, and he says, that Prabhupada translates so-called knowledge. So Prabhupada, wonderful purports here. Prabhupada said this mantra of Isopanisad is more applicable today than at any time in the past. Ignorance and illusion is being worshipped, and people are so absorbed in it. I mean, to try to wake them up is a very difficult task. Modern civilization advanced considerably in the field of mass education. Now, Prabhupada talks a lot about education because this is really an educational institution. We're trying to give real knowledge to the people for their benefit. There's education in America. I remember reading about that when I was in school. It took a lot to get to the point of public education. That the government should actually be responsible for seeing that people learn how to read and that they, that wasn't a given. I mean, it's a given in Vedic culture, but not in Western culture. So they have the public schools now, But what do you learn there? Of course, you learn how to read, reading, writing, arithmetic, basics of how you can live in a society. But is there any impartation of this kind of knowledge? I just heard Prabhupada today in a lecture. He was talking about how he went to MIT. He called it Massachusetts Technical Institute. And they let him speak there, and they were very fascinated. And he said, where is the department in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology that is studying the difference between a dead body and a living body? And there is no department. That's the most important point. What is it that differentiates a living body from a dead body? And of course, it's the departure of the soul. I mean, anyone who's been in the Hare Krishnas or studied Bhagavad Gita, even the second chapter, will know that. But the whole society is built on the false platform of the bodily concept of life. And Prabhupada quotes this verse from the 10th canto, which was spoken by Krishna, by the way, where he's taking the role of a attached householder, actually. Yasyatma buddhi kunupet vidatuke swadikalatradashabom ejidi. These are all, it says, the atma buddhi, the buddhi and the di means ideas, your conception. Conception that you are, atma buddhi. My understanding is this body, which is like a bag filled with the three dhatus, mucus, bile, and air. The body itself, when you actually think about it, is pretty abominable. It's a very complicated machine with a nice covering that allows the soul to interact with the material energy and to try to enjoy, this world with all of its concomitant suffering. But it's not us, right? We know that. But so if you think it is, then you're fool number one. An example is at the end of the verse, there's various things, and one who thinks that my wife, my kids, what does it say? Yasyatma bukunabheja, that is swadhi kalatradishaboma iji. Swadhi, that these are actually mine, to give possession. The Prabhupada refers to the first verse, the first mantra. Ishavashamidam savam yatkanchit jagatyam jagatena chaktena bhunjidha magodakasya siddhanam. It's one of the two ones I know of these 18 mantras. No, 3. The first one is the introduction, invocation. So it says everything in the universe is controlled and owned by the Isha. Isha is Krishna, the God. And we are allowed, it's bona fide for us to take what we need for our maintenance. But if you take more than you need, then you're a thief, basically. One should remember well who it belongs. Prabhupada said this is the root cause of all the problems in the world, is that more and more greed, individually and then organized in nations, exploiting imperialism, all of that. It causes tremendous suffering in the world. So that understanding of one's position, if you say, well, these children, this house, this is mine, I'm controlling this, that's ignorance. The first bit is everything belongs to God. Everything belongs to Krishna. And living in that understanding means, well, then we should try to employ it in His service, if it actually belongs to Him. Just like this temple. Everyone knows, you may not always be able to follow it, but this belongs to Krishna. Like you go into paraphernalia back there. Oh, this is Krishna's paraphernalia. For worship, we have to polish it, keep it clean, dry it off. Everything. So this is a mini little spiritual world. It's meant to be, where our whole consciousness is on using our own paraphernalia, mind, body, words, and everything we can engage in Krishna's service, especially the words. And book distribution, studying the books and distributing the books. This is the best use of this paper and ink. So the Prabhupada is condemning modern civilization, especially the education. People are more unhappy than ever before because of the stress placed on material advancement to the exclusion of the most important of life, the spiritual aspect. This is his central theme for his preaching. And wake up and start paying attention to your spiritual mission in life. He refers to the first mantra, as I mentioned, giving this edict that everything belongs to Krishna. And then he divides the different classes of men, the karmis, the jnanis, and the yogis. 99.9%, I think it's a lot more than that, but practically everyone. They're engaged in the activities of sense gratification under the flags of industrialism, economic development, altruism, political activity, and so on. And even under the flags of yoga, this is to hijack people. This is one of the qualities of this age, that people are very lazy in the matter of spiritual advancement. And even when they are interested, they're misguided. They fall into the clutches of misguiders who take advantage of that desire. I just, again, hearing Prabhupada, he's coming upon these themes always this morning. Yoga, what does yoga mean to people? Oh, that's a way where I can get healthy, I can get limber, and I can lose weight, and so forth. There's a health program, which is all fine and good, but that's not really what yoga is. The final, if you think that's the end point of yoga, you're being cheated. You're being cheated. And that's why even the yoga studios, they get bored with all this physical stuff, and so they like that, have kirtan, right? Let's have some kirtan, even though they don't know what they're doing. At least if they're trying to chant, name of Krishna, get Hare Krishna going, then that's very auspicious, So yoga, people from yoga studios. I joined from yoga, that kind of yoga, because there was, I was inquisitive. You don't just leave your brain at the door, And there was enough there to intrigue me about yoga, and I got to, of course, the temple eventually. So Srila Prabhupada, his whole mission, when did he come? He came when he had those books, when he felt that he could really substantially push back this shroud of avidya, of ignorance, that causes so much suffering. In the Nectar of Devotion, the first thing you read practically is the source of sin. Sin is the source of suffering, and ignorance is the source of sin. So ignorance is the source of suffering. Just like if you don't know, the child, everyone knows a child is helpless, you have to watch them all the time. They don't know. They look at some nice colored pill in a bottle and eat it, and they get very sick. So ignorance is the cause of activity that's outside the bounds of intelligence or virtue, and is going to suffer. And people are so ignorant, and that's why they're suffering. And the demagogues come, try to exploit that, And they don't know why the suffering is, but they know that when people are unhappy, you can exploit them by pointing them in a direction. Those are the people. They're coming over the border. That's what they're taking all your jobs. And that's why, And this is causes more suffering. Then you have what we have today, incipient fascism in America. So he's saying that ignorance is bad enough, but those who pretend to give knowledge, but are really also just deepening the ignorance. There's a song by Bhaktivinoda, I don't know, of the Bengali, but he's saying that material education makes you more ignorant, because you think you know something, In other words, now I'm well educated, rather than feeling, well, I have to search for real knowledge. So now I know. Now I know. What was that we heard? Was it Vijay told that story, where a guy came up to the table and he was saying, I'm an atheist, And Vijay said, well, you have are you sure? So I have a hunch. I have a good hunch that there's no God. I said, then you're not an atheist, you're an agnostic. That was a huge insult for the atheist. Because the atheist means, I know there's no God. The agnostics are reachable. Well, I really don't know. Oh, then take this book. Maybe you'll find out. The guy became very angry. So that's the problem with these materialistic education. You come at it and say, now I know. I'm sure, this so-called intelligent design, that's just a euphemism for creationism. And we know creationism, and that's coming from the Christian side, is wrong. Yeah, God created the earth in 6 days. We haven't we graduated beyond that, We try to explain, the sophisticated way in the third canto. You go to teachings of Kapila Dev, just how the false ego in contact with the different modes of nature produces the demigods and the senses and the objects of the senses and all of this thing, which is more satisfying for the intelligence. But these guys know, and they write books on that basis. So that's why he's saying that the education in the hands of the ignorant is more dangerous than just out-and-out ignorance. And that's what he's saying. Those who play the role of helping this sort of civilization in the name of educational advancement are actually doing more harm than those who are on the platform of gross sense gratification. So, reading these words, now just a little history about the Isopanisad. The Isopanisad came out before the Bhagavatam. Prabhupada wrote that in India, actually, but he didn't publish it all in India. He published a few of the mantras in his Back to Godhead. Many of the books that we have, even the CC, we started serializing it in the Back to Godhead magazine. But Back to Godhead was kind of intermittent. There was a period there where he just couldn't write it, or he was busy writing Bhagavatam, whatever. So he got through, I forget how many, maybe 12 mantras, but he brought the rest with him in manuscript form. Now, when he came to America, publishing books was a big mission of Srila Prabhupada, obviously. So he's always writing the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita. He had to rewrite the whole thing. I was telling that last night. He did that in 67, 68. And eventually, of course, it came out in abridged form and then in unabridged form in 1972. The Isopanisad preceded that. The Isopanisad was there in 69. The first Isopanisad came out. It was edited by Ray Rama, who had been a cartoon writer. This is what he had to work with. And Hayagriva Prabhu, the professor, who really wasn't a tenured professor, but he was an instructor in English. He was doing all those little books we have, which is quite a contribution. Raja Vidya, we don't see it so much, but Perfection of Yoga, all those he did from the lectures. And as well, he would do the Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam was coming out, working on the first canto, then that came out, and then the second canto. Prabhupada was so eager to get it out that they started publishing one chapter at a time. You may sometimes see those. You see one, second canto, chapter 3, with illustration. So all this is happening, and meanwhile, Isopanisad was there, the first edition, and when Prabhupada went to L.A., was it 70? I think they got that place in Watseka. It was a big deal to have that. And so, but the Bhagavatam hadn't been produced yet, even the first canto. Of course, he had his original books, but he wouldn't want to give classes on that because he didn't have all the Sanskrit and everything. So the Isopanisad, there were Isopanisad classes. These were what they were listening to. And you can always tell when someone was in that old temple because they know the whole Isopanisad. They can whip it off, So these, this is what was, this preaching here was a big foundation of how the movement grew in those early days. And, Prabhupada's just laying it out here. Advancement of education by a godless people is like decorations on a dead body. Now this is a verse. Bhagavad bhakti hi nasya jati shastram japastapaha apranasya dehasya mandanam lokaranjanam. So Bhagavad bhakti hi nasya, without any tinge of bhakti, devotional service. There may be so much chanting of japa, austerities, what is it? Bhagavad jati, your good birth, your chanting of mantras, whatever it is, but it's all useless. It's just like education that really doesn't touch on the essential education of who are we, who is God, what is this world, what the relationship is, see? So it's like decorations on a dead body, which I think is common today. I know my father, he dressed him up in his best suit, when he passed away. And then all of that business with makeup and, anything. So, but what's the use of it? In other words, it's very elaborate. It can be very elaborate and superficially attractive, but ultimately it doesn't enhance anything. It's just it's only for the ignorant people in general. They're pleased to see that. But that's the idea of it. So the same thing is true for materialistic education. It seems to be, you've got the Harvard and you've got the Yale and the Stanford and all of these Ivy League schools, and there's so much going on there. Departments of education. One of the interesting things that happened to me when I had my little run-in, I could say, with higher education. I went to one of the finest schools. It's sometimes considered like an Ivy League school, the University of Chicago. That was the school where one of the first sustained atomic reactions was happened and run up to the production of the atom bomb. They have a plaque there where that happened, very famous. But it's known as a great school for math and science, and believe it or not, Sanskrit is one of the 3 or 4 main schools in America that have a major Sanskrit department with a lot of books and a library and teachers. So I go to this school, and my brother is there, and he had gone through the whole school. He had a master's degree already. He was able to get me my own room as a freshman in a dorm, which is not done, without a roommate. So there I was, and then I had full scholarship. I had to work like a couple hours a week just to pay, little stuff at the commissary. So I had a choice of languages to study. And basically it boiled down to Greek or Sanskrit. I took Greek. My brother prevailed upon me. He was really into Socrates and Plato and all these philosophers, Anyway, but what came out of that Sanskrit, they probably knew, how to chant, the students who went through it, how to chant these verses and Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads and all that stuff, But without a proper guide or a proper translation that's giving you the real meaning, it's just decorations on a dead body. The whole thing is a decoration on a dead body. All of this, the exaltation of the Harvard and all the money they have, and the degrees, law degrees, and this and that, without reference to the soul and God and relationship and understanding the books of knowledge that has been given to us from the proper source. That's why Sanatana Goswami was so, he quoted that verse, Prabhupada is quoting it all the time. Avaishnavo mukod girnam putam hadikatamritam shabanam naivas kartavyam sarpatishtam yatapaya. Prabhupada refers to this idea. The snake with a cobra with a jewel on it, that comes up here, right? Yeah. So the same idea is here, is that one should never hear. Now, Katamrita, Hari Katamrita, means the nectarian talks about Krishna, right? Harikatha is Krishna Katha, which is just like nectar and very purifying, putam. But one should never hear such talks from a non-Vaishnava. A Vaishnavo mukodginam, from the mouth of a non-Vaishnava, don't hear the nectarian Harikatha, putam Harikatha. It's just like Shravanam Sarpo Tishtam Yatapaya. The snake, the poisonous snake, may find a bowl or a container of milk and sip some from it. Well, then that milk is spoiled. The poison has gone in there. You don't want to take that milk, right? It may look like regular milk, may taste like regular milk, but it has a poisonous effect. Similarly, kirtan, which we've been battling this because there's so many, kirtan is popular. It has power even when chanted by non-devotees. There was a book came out a few years ago. I was in the book. I can show you. All about kirtan, put together by Satyaraj. And he had there some of these karmis, little karmis, non-devotees, declaring as such, who become popular chanting Hare Krishna. Going to yoga studios, making money like that. That's exactly what we shouldn't listen to. Better to hear, a simple kirtan chanted in front of Radhagiri by one of us. Maybe a little out of key, out of rhythm, whatever maybe. It's much better, much more purifying than hearing that very fancy kirtan. That's not from a devotee's heart. Even though it may sound better superficially, it has a debilitating effect on the soul. It doesn't attract you to Krishna. So we have to be careful of that. Of course, we're fortunate there's many very nice kirtaniyas who are skilled, and musically who are also devotees. You can find them all on the internet and YouTube. So anyway, one more point here, and then we'll adjourn or have questions, discussion. And that is, modern civilization is a patchwork of activities meant to cover the perpetual miseries of material existence. Now this I've been thinking about lately, is that there's so many opportunities, even more than before because of the internet and everything, to find a way, something you can be absorbed in. Gaming has become like huge, and also dangerous. I'll tell you about that another time. But it completely absorbs, And what does it do? It's the same thing that sense gratification does in general, and that is distract you from the actual nature of life in this world, which is dukkha mashashranam. It's temporary and miserable, full of miseries. This is from Krishna. He declares it that. Now people say, "Oh, you're being pessimistic. There's some ups and downs, but I'm doing okay." But that okay is just a facade. It's a temporary situation where things are kind of going right. You're enjoying some of your good karma, But that's going to end, and the roof is going to cave in. Some disease will happen, some accident, some whatever. It's the way it is in the material world, Some huge cataclysm, war, climate change, disaster. These things are happening all over, And the people who undergo them, try to like they had this fire. Was it? I think 2017. One in Paradise, upstate. There was a retirement city up there. And the people, why did they name it Paradise? Well, this is okay. Must have been very nice, California, and I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly, it was an upscale, nice houses, and people had retired to Paradise. What happened to that paradise? The fire came streaming in, a football field, moving at the speed of a football field every second or so. In other words, you can't get away. A certain number, 85 people died. Horrible deaths. So the days, the weeks, the months that led up to that, no one is thinking like that. No one is thinking, I better chant Hare Krishna because, at any moment, right? It's like a razor's edge. You can go. That's the way we should feel. Janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi, dukkha, dosha. To never forget the miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death. And they may come at us at any time. Therefore, we need to stay Krishna conscious. We have to get serious and kick out all the nonsense. That's the natural conclusion. Otherwise, you can forget those things, and you can absorb yourself in the so-called pleasures of this world. But they're like a narcotic. They put you to sleep to cover your knowledge and cover your awareness of the reality of life. And we pity those people who really get into narcotics. I told that story, I think last night, about this devotee, recently. I read in the Prison Ministry magazine how he was a devotee, but he couldn't, he was going along nicely, but then he thought, well, I'll take a little hashish or, something like that, and got into that habit, and from there he got back into the bad habit of harder drugs and left the movement, and eventually came back, left, went back, went to prison. What's the point? The point is always to forget, is to reach a state of consciousness where I don't have to think of all my pain, but then you just cause more pain. That's exactly what sense gratification of any kind is. It's a drug, it's a narcotic, to put us in the bodily concept of life, which is ignorance, gross ignorance, and as it says right here, enter into the greatest darkness while thinking you're becoming educated. While thinking you're enjoying with X, Y, Z sense gratification. A great example is drug, because it's an extreme example. It illustrates the point. And then on the back side of it, the time may not even be very great. It's more suffering than you had before, and now you're hooked. But every sense gratification you get hooked to. That's what it means. That's why when you die with those unfulfilled desires, you come back to try to fulfill it. Plus, you have to suffer the karma, if you did a sinful reaction. So this is material life. Prabhupada saw the emergency of the state we're in, and he gave us this knowledge to let us escape from the burning forest fire or the roiling ocean of material life, however you want to look at it. Dangerous situation that requires emergency activity, and the emergency activity main is chanting Hare Krishna. Okay, I went over time. Any discussion or points on these? Maybe in the internet land, they can't communicate with us. I think that's a next step possible. Yeah. All right.
How will that look?
You mean like if they ask questions?
Yeah.
I'd have to have a computer here probably or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Or maybe you could have it. You could repeat a question.
Well, it filters through me and then comes to you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that'd be good if the person sitting here.
I have that in Columbus.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, someone's sitting there and
somebody's sitting there and then we got a question, and that person reads a question. Okay. So all right, well I'll ask a question.
Okay.
We don't got
live and in color.
Yeah, we don't have these. Ask a question. So you're saying that you're quoting that verse, but Mukam Gitam, that if you hear Hare
Vaishnava Mukod Girna.
if you hear
Non-Vaishnava.
Non-Vaishnav speak Hare Katha, then it's poison. It's like poison.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, that's there. But what about well, first of all, sometimes it's hard. We may not know who's a Vaishnav. Like, for example, like nowadays, it's not that it's just like, we're just here and, we hear all the devotees sing and, hear them speak and like whoever, it's like a closed system or something.
Uh-huh.
It's not a closed system at all nowadays. It's people, they get online and they hear Vaishnavs sing. But how are we supposed to know they're Vaishnavs? I mean, you could say maybe it's clear. I guess.
That's why we have the restrictions. Even in the temple, who's going to lead kirtan? I mean, that's kind of even you have a Vaishnav who may be he happen to have pants on and he's got a beard. Okay, well, he can't lead kirtan. Why is that? Because it's a slippery slope. And you want to try to because leading kirtan is a kind of leadership position, and it's something you emulate, and that's why we sing only certain tunes, and stuff like that. But the thing is, like as I mentioned, there's so many opportunities, even through the internet, to hear from confirmed. You don't have to have any doubt. I mean, I personally like Bhakti Bringa Maharaj's kirtans, you know. So sometimes I go on and I find they're all over the place. There's some big kirtan mela, you know. It's a great opportunity. You don't have to think, well, that one sounds pretty good. I wonder who that is, you know what I mean? Be on the safe side. That's why, you know, also, you know, Prabhupada's books is so important. We have so many Prabhupada's books. You're always on the safe side. You know, and there's so much to know and so much to read. This, you know, I was reading the other day. Maybe we can read this next time when we get through this Isha. The Mukunda Mala Stotra. Now, much of that book was completed by Gopi Pranadatta Prabhu and Satsup Maharaj, which is fine. I mean, we can read that. But the first 12 or so of those verses were translated by Prabhupada, and he wrote long purports, all in India, before he started the Bhagavatam. So it's a little different flavor. So the point is, you got plenty to read. So then, if you want to read, some other book, okay, then you should check, with yourself. I might say, what about this book by Shivaram Swami? Yeah, that's fine. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot you can read. So the idea is that the same thing is there with kirtan. There's so many kirtaniyas, so many wonderful sounds that you can listen to. Why go into something that makes you think materially sounds so good, but who is that actually singing?
About someone may say that that makes sense. Just listen to ISKCON devotees, who are bona fide, authentic.
Yeah.
But some may say that there's also all these ISKCON devotees, but I also don't know about them. I don't really know them. They have a nice voice.
Yeah.
But what's their philosophical conclusions? Are they spot on? Are they smoking hashish? Behind the concert hall. What's their control on lust? I mean, have they controlled their senses? Because you have these guru coolies, which I don't want to diss the guru coolies or something. I'm sure there's plenty of ones who are very qualified and sincere.
Yeah.
But the fact is, you have some of them who are a little, they don't really follow the principles, but they have a very nice voice, and they play the harmonium very nice, and the mridanga very nice. So, like one devotee told me, better not hear from certain persons. And I said, well, why? And he said, because they're not detached from this world. They're very attached to this world, which could indicate they also don't follow the principles,
Well, all I can say is consult. If there's some doubt, ask somebody who will know better. Yeah, and let's face it, there's such an abundance of wonderful kirtans that we can listen to. We should not neglect listening to Prabhupada chant. It may not seem as polished and as musical, but there's a potency there that is really unique. There's no question about it. We just read that verse. I wasn't here. The one about the mercy particles, the voice of the spiritual master, the pure devotee is in touch with the mercy particles at the lotus feet of Krishna, and then when he speaks, then that's travel and enters your ear. Who did? Oh, Raja Mohan. Yeah, must have been nice. So anyway, I was out of town. So it's we just have to use our head, and not indulge too much in our material side of things. There are plenty of wonderful kirtaniyas who are fine and who we can listen to for the rest of our lives, and learn to chant ourselves. Okay.